At 3:17 in the morning, your body can be perfectly safe and still feel like it's under attack. Your room is quiet, your phone is face down, no predator is outside the door, and yet your chest is tight, your thoughts are racing, and some invisible hand seems to be squeezing the future into a threat. 2,500 years ago, a man sat beneath a tree and diagnosed that exact feeling with terrifying precision. But first, let me tell you why this matters more today than ever. Long before therapy language, self-help podcasts, or productivity apps pretending to cure burnout, there was a prince who walked away from luxury because comfort had failed to answer the most disturbing question of all. Why does the human mind suffer even when it has what it wants? Siddhartha Gautama was not born into hardship. He was born into protection. Legend says his father tried to engineer a life so pleasant, so insulated, that he would never encounter pain deeply enough to question the world. Imagine it: walled gardens, polished stone courtyards, musicians, silks, servants, safety everywhere. And then one day he sees what cannot be unseen: old age, sickness, death. That sequence matters because Buddhism does not begin with abstract speculation. It begins with a confrontation, not with heaven, not with metaphysics, with reality, with the fact that no amount of status, beauty, wealth, or distraction can negotiate with decay. This is why Buddhism feels strangely modern. It doesn't flatter your fantasies, it studies your panic. And here's the part people often miss. The Buddha was not just a spiritual teacher. He was, in a profound sense, an ancient psychologist. He observed the mind the way a surgeon studies anatomy. What triggers distress? What sustains it? Why do we cling to what changes and resist what cannot be controlled? In that sense, Eastern thought and Stoic philosophy are not opposites. They are cousins. Both ask the same dangerous question: what if your suffering is not caused mainly by the world, but by your relationship to it? That question is offensive to modern culture, because modern culture sells a different promise: fix the outside and the inside will calm down. Buy more, optimize more, achieve more, curate better habits, better aesthetics, better routines. Yet anxiety keeps rising. Depression keeps rising. Loneliness keeps rising. If all our tools are so advanced, why are our inner lives so fragile? What the Buddha discovered next became the foundation of one of the most influential systems of philosophy in human history, the Four Noble Truths. And the first one sounds so bleak that many people reject it before they understand it. That is exactly where the real revelation begins. The first noble truth is usually translated simply: life is suffering. And that translation is both famous and deeply misleading. A better word than suffering might be unsatisfactoriness, friction, the subtle inability of life to stay the way you want it. The Buddha called it dukkha. It includes obvious pain, grief, fear, illness, but it also includes the anxiety hidden inside pleasure, because even when something is good, you know it won't last, and that knowledge contaminates the experience. Listen to this line from the Dhammapada: all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. That is not poetry for monks. That is a diagnosis for your nervous system. Why does the text say conditioned things? Because everything you build your identity on is conditioned. Your mood depends on sleep. Your confidence depends on praise. Your peace depends on plans going well. Your sense of worth depends on outcomes, appearance, momentum, approval. In other words, your inner world is rented out to unstable external conditions. No wonder anxiety feels constant. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think the first noble truth is negative. It isn't negative, it's honest. There is a massive difference. Pessimism says nothing can be done. The Buddha says something far more empowering. If suffering has causes, it can be understood. If it can be understood, it can be interrupted. Modern anxiety often comes from pretending uncertainty is a problem we can solve permanently. But uncertainty is not a glitch in life. It is life. Stoic philosophy says something similar. Epictetus warned that we suffer when we confuse what is in our control with what is not. Buddhism pushes further. It says even the self, trying to control everything, is more unstable than you think. That's the counterintuitive claim. Anxiety is not always a sign that your life is broken. Sometimes it's the mind's reaction to reality when reality refuses to obey your fantasy of permanence. Think about your own life. Have you ever gotten the thing you were desperate for, a relationship, a job, a goal, and instead of peace, you felt a new fear? Now you're afraid to lose it, afraid to fail it, afraid it won't feel the way you imagined. That is dukkha, not because joy is fake, but because clinging turns joy into tension, and there's something even more shocking. The Buddha's second truth says the cause of this suffering is not pain itself, it's craving. The second noble truth is called samudaya, the origin of suffering, and the Buddha names it with brutal clarity, tanha, often translated as thirst, the mind's endless reaching, wanting what is absent, resisting what is present, trying to secure what cannot stay secured. The quote is simple: the root of suffering is attachment. Now be careful. This is where people either oversimplify Buddhism into passivity or reject it entirely because it seems to attack ambition. But that's not what's happening. The Buddha is not saying desire in every form is evil. He is saying compulsive attachment is the trap. The problem is not that you love. The problem is that you demand permanence from what is temporary. And yes, here's the controversial statement. A huge amount of what the self-improvement industry calls motivation is just socially approved anxiety. That will annoy some people. Good, it should, because much of modern self-improvement is not actually about growth. It's about panic with better branding. Work harder so you can finally feel enough. Optimize your morning so you can control uncertainty. Build your body, your income, your image, your discipline, then maybe you'll deserve peace. But if the engine underneath all that is fear, then the achievement does not free you. It trains your nervous system to believe peace must be earned through constant becoming. That is why some of the most outwardly successful people are inwardly tormented. They have mastered acquisition but not release. And before someone objects, no, Buddhism is not telling you to become indifferent and do nothing. In fact, this is where it gets interesting. Buddhism distinguishes between wise intention and egoic craving. You can work, create, build, love, lead, and strive without chaining your identity to the result. That is where Buddhism, Taoism, and modern Stoicism overlap in a fascinating way. Taoism calls it effortless action. Stoic philosophy calls it focusing on what is yours to govern. Buddhism calls it non-attachment. Different language, similar liberation. So how do you know whether you're acting from clarity or craving? Ask yourself one question: if this fails, do I collapse? If the answer is yes, you may not be pursuing the goal, you may be worshipping it. This changes personal transformation completely. You don't become calm by getting everything arranged correctly. You become calm by loosening the mental grip that says everything must go your way for you to be okay. That is the beginning of freedom. But the Buddha doesn't stop at diagnosis. He offers a third truth so radical it almost sounds impossible to the anxious mind. The end of suffering is possible. The third noble truth, nirodha, says suffering can cease. Not because life becomes painless, not because you move to a monastery, delete your apps, and float above the human condition, but because the mechanism that turns pain into torment can be dismantled. Read this slowly. Peace comes from within, do not seek it without. This line gets turned into decoration too often, printed on mugs, posted over sunsets, flattened into vague wellness advice. But in Buddhist philosophy, it is a precise claim. Peace is not the reward at the end of perfect circumstances. Peace is what becomes available when you stop outsourcing your stability to things that change. And that leads to the fourth noble truth, the path, the noble eightfold path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This is not a list for moral performance. It is a training system for perception, a method for retraining attention, conduct, and consciousness so craving loses its grip. Here's the emotional peak of the entire teaching. The Buddha is not asking you to become someone else. He is showing you how suffering is manufactured in real time, inside your habits of thought, speech, reaction, and identity. Which means your freedom is not hiding in some distant future version of yourself. It is hidden in the next moment of awareness. Can you feel how radical that is? If anxiety says, "I'll be okay when," the four noble truths reply, "Look closer. That sentence is the cage." This is where ancient wisdom becomes modern medicine for the mind, not in the simplistic sense of just meditate and everything goes away, but but in the deeper sense that your distress often intensifies because the mind keeps adding narrative, resistance, and identification to raw experience. Pain says, "This hurts." Anxiety adds, "This will never end. This means something is wrong with me. I must fix this now. I can't handle this." The second arrow is often self-inflicted. That insight is everywhere once you see it. In Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius says, in essence, that the mind can convert obstacles into fuel. In Taoism, force creates friction, while alignment reduces struggle. In Buddhism, clinging creates suffering. Different civilizations, same battlefield, the human mind. So what do the Four Noble Truths mean for you practically? When your chest is tight at 3:17 in the morning, first, name the experience honestly. This is suffering, not failure, not weakness, not a personal defect. Human suffering, shared, ancient, understood. Second, ask what craving is present. What am I demanding right now? Certainty, control, reassurance, a guarantee, the immediate end of discomfort. Third, remember that the feeling is not the whole of reality. It is a conditioned event. It arose and therefore it can pass. Fourth, return to the path. Breathe, observe, speak carefully, act cleanly. Simplify, pay attention. Not because these things make you superior, but because they make you less divided. And maybe the deepest revelation of all is this: the Buddha does not promise you a life where nothing hurts. He promises something better, a life where hurt no longer automatically becomes imprisonment. Isn't that what most people actually want? Not a world without change, not a future with zero loss, just the ability to stand inside uncertainty without being destroyed by it. So let's return to that first scene. 3:17 in the morning, tight chest, racing mind, the room unchanged, but inside you, a storm. Most people meet that moment with the wrong question. They ask, how do I make this stop immediately? The Buddha asks a more powerful one. What am I clinging to that makes this moment unbearable? That question can change your life if you actually use it. For the next 7 days, when anxiety rises, whether it's over money, love, status, health, work, aging, or the opinion of strangers, don't just ask what you feel. Ask what you are demanding from reality. What certainty are you trying to force? What image of yourself are you trying to protect? What outcome have you secretly decided must happen for you to be okay? Write it down, one sentence, every time, because that is where Eastern philosophy becomes practical, not in abstract reverence, in observation, in catching the machinery as it operates. This is why Buddhism has endured. This is why modern Stoicism resonates. This is why ancient wisdom still cuts deeper than algorithm-fed advice. It doesn't just tell you to feel better. It shows you why you suffer and what to do with that knowledge. And yes, this is where some viewers will disagree. Some will say anxiety is purely chemical, purely social, purely circumstantial. But the Buddha's insight remains devastatingly relevant. Even when conditions matter, and they do, the mind's relationship to conditions still determines whether pain becomes identity. That debate is worth having. In fact, it's necessary. So drop your interpretation in the comments. Which of the Four Noble Truths hits hardest for you right now? The reality of suffering, the cause in craving, the possibility of release, or the discipline of the path? The best answers always come from this community. And if this shifted something in your thinking, subscribe. We go deeper every week into philosophy, self-improvement, Stoic philosophy, Taoism, Buddhism, and the ideas that help you face modern life without becoming owned by it. Because the real goal was never to control the world. It was to stop letting the world control your mind. Freedom begins where clinging ends.